director of the International Youth Film Festival, also known as the IYFF. And I would like to thank you all for coming here today to the National Center for Civil and Human Rights to witness the inaugural Social Justice Symposium. I was first introduced to this idea a couple of months ago, and I never did imagine that something spectacular would transpire. So I first founded the IYFF my freshman year of high school 4 years ago. My initial goal was to create a virtual platform where all students, regardless of socioeconomic status, could share their innovative work with the world. So our first virtual event took place this past January, and we wheeled in films from the UK and the United States. And as we look to spring this year, we've expanded our global network, already reaching 4 continents. Films from Nepal, Argentina, Norway, and more join the list of countries represented in the International Youth Film Festival. And as you all walk through the museum over the past hour, you examine the history of the civil rights movement as well as human rights around the world, continuing into today's culture. All films are made for youth and by youth at this event and tell stories of social justice around the globe. Whether the picture involves a girl combating climate change in Nicaragua or communities rallying together in Minnesota in the summer of 2020, these stories are revolutionary. They are inspirational, they are personal, and they are intense. The IYFF will highlight the active role that Gen Z has taken and is currently taking in protesting social justice today. Around the world, students have found films a platform to express their opinions, speaking out against mistreatment and bigotry. The IYFF will showcase 3 international youth films this evening addressing pivotal topics in our current global climate. Now I welcome keynote speaker Francesca Casciari to the podium. Francesca, a valiant voice of women's rights and fighting sexism, built her own website, Being Anti-Sexist. On her site, she writes, I believe that by introducing a philosophical and classical dimension to the conversation that surrounds sexism and women's rights, teenagers can better understand the fundamental roots that reinforce sexist ideologies and institutions worldwide. Francesca, you are an ardent advocate of equality, and for that I applaud you. I'll let you take it from here.
Hi everyone, thank you Jack. As you just heard, my name is Francesca Casciari and I'm a high school senior at the Nightingale Bamford School in New York City. It's such an honor to be speaking alongside these incredible students today, and I'd like to thank the National Center for Civil and Human Rights, as well as our mentor Tim West for hosting us here. What a privilege to be able to welcome you all to the International Youth Film Festival. Now I must confess, before I proceed any further, that I have nothing to do with filmmaking. My artistic ability is that of a toddler. On a good day, you'll find me drawing a discernible stick figure, but really my specialty as it pertains to film and media is consumption. Like any lay person, I've watched my fair share of movies. So I'm sure this begs the question, what's this girl doing here and why is she presenting? Fair enough. Well, I have had my hand in social justice and advocacy just through a different lens, no pun intended. The lens I use is that of academia. I refer to myself as an academic activist. I study modern issues through their ancient histories and use that to spread communal awareness. A modern issue that electrifies me most is women's rights. Currently, violence against women and girls is considered the biggest human rights violation in the world. I've campaigned for female empowerment through a project I founded called Being Anti-Sexist. There, I have a team of 6 teenage ambassadors who join me in our mission to provide education about the classical and philosophical foundations that have supported the perpetuation of modern sexism. I've also worked closely with the National Eating Disorders Association, NEDA, as an intern and program creator to aid the harm that spawns from eating disorders and toxic beauty standards. This past summer, I helped pioneer a satellite campus program with NEDA that works to mobilize college students across the nation in our fight against eating disorders. Today, it feels only fitting that I focus on these very topics, given our location at the center, as women worldwide fight to dismantle misogynistic ideologies in our prolonged battle for equal rights. The oppressive beauty standards we face remain a formidable enemy, as they allow for the objectification and degradation of our gender. Yet with the proper tools, like film, media, and cultural institutions like this very one, I'm confident we can not only change this destructive narrative around body image, but advance all social movements too. There we go. Through movies, we've all grown familiar with toxic female beauty standards. Time and again, Hollywood has promoted select qualities, such as whiteness, blonde hair, blue eyes, long legs, impossibly tiny waists, and similarly impossibly large chests. Whether it be Marilyn Monroe or Pamela Anderson, as seen here, when the silver screen conflates these values with the ideal form, impressionable youth receive a potent message. Regardless of her internal qualities, a woman's appearance defines her worth. In recent years, our society has seen a surge of measures to counter such negative ideologies. Body positivity movements have largely been labeled as a panacea for millennium worth of harmful imagery and oppression. Both people and films have embraced this trend in its optimistic glory. The late 2010s welcomed a new era of film representation of diverse body types, and for that we do have this movement to thank. But I'm anti-body positivity. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm all for women loving and caring for themselves, but I don't think this movement is the proper way to achieve such ends. As body positivity has manifested, it's proven to be a convenient and successful cash grab for corporations and celebrities, even film producers, thus destroying the trend's original integrity. Its taglines of love yourself and everyone's perfect have created trauma for young individuals akin to that of body negativity, just now in disguised fashion. Forcing youth to adore every aspect of their bodies, when they very well may not, establishes a similarly twisted relationship with one's appearance. These messages, despite their facades of idealism and wokeness, are rooted in the same erroneous belief that a woman's appearance holds any societal value. The only difference now is that we've switched a woman's worth from being completely negative, unless she fits the Hollywood archetype, to being completely positive with no exceptions. This transition, though, fails to address the underlying issue of assessing a woman based on her appearance in the first place. Body positivity is a mere distraction, as the same forces and the same people benefit at the hands of innocent individuals' well-being. The true solution to this dichotomy between body negativity and positivity is a third option, one that takes this swinging pendulum and throws it away. Body neutrality is a relatively new term that's gained traction in recent years. The idea is simple. Our bodies hold neither negative nor positive connotations. Our bodies are bodies. They are miraculously complicated anatomical vessels that perform millions of processes to keep us alive and healthy each day. And that's a magical thing. No need for a positive or negative assessment. This mentality allows youth to reach true liberation from previous monstrous messages as we bask in simple neutrality. Body negativity envisioned a world where everyone hated themselves unless they were societally pretty, which is clearly toxic. Body positivity envisioned a world where everyone robotically loved every little thing about themselves, toxic and creepy. Body neutrality envisions a world where all qualitative associations are removed from our physical appearances. Freedom. As I preach these messages, I'd be remiss to not remind everyone that, coincidentally, it's currently Body Acceptance Week. At NEDA, this means thanking your body for all that it does, not criticizing it. It means accepting your physical form, but honoring your internal one more, your talents, your strengths, your mind. It means that you're allowed to have insecurities, but that the world can't use those to determine your worth. So where does this all fit into film? Well, it's hard, and I'm sure that's the answer you were looking for. But by nature, filmmaking and watching are visual experiences. While we can champion efforts of body neutrality and the dissociation of value from physical form, we are, at the end of the day, humans. As such, we carry societal biases with us, whether or not we like it. We're drawn to certain faces and attracted to specific appearances, so codifying complete neutrality into film and society at large is essentially asking humans to challenge our own environmental conditionings. Yet as beauty standards are both established and reinforced through film and media, what better way to challenge them than through those same vessels? Movies, in their essence, are stories. These stories can evoke powerful emotions, they can define generations, and even influence public opinion. in our digital age, these stories have never been more accessible for people. People who have voices, who have platforms, who have votes. And when it comes to utilize these provisions, especially that latter one on this upcoming November 8th, people have the chance to alter the status quo. Suddenly, via film through this transitive link affecting policy and legislation. Film affecting real change. When we tap into this energy and its boundless possibilities, we tap into the potential to use film to subvert this narrative surrounding body image and beauty standards, especially in a time when women have so much at stake. As a result, we're able to free youth from their hunger, sometimes literally, to obtain a certain physique, and instead leave them inspired, impassioned, and emboldened. It's those ends the talented filmmakers today have worked towards, whether in relation to women's rights or any other social justice movement, and I hope you'll join me in welcoming them all. Thank you.
Thank you, Francesca. That was amazing. So now I would like to introduce our first film of the evening. Next up, we'll have the presentation of Iya Kayada. Iya Kayada, or The Silent Daughter, powerfully explores the impact of generational trauma and begins to examine how speaking the truth to power can set a foundation for social change and making a difference in Latinx communities. Co-directed by youth filmmakers Francesca Precorian, who is here with us today, will speak on our panel. Stephanie Barcenas and Julia Esta Montiel. The film discusses the machismo effect, a strong or aggressive masculine pride that is very prominent in many Latin households. 3 generations of Mexican women from different families sharing their personal stories as a way of demonstrating that people affected by generational trauma are not alone. More importantly, it shows us speaking up as a first step towards breaking the cycle. Iya Kayada, everyone. Thank you.
How my parents treated each other?
Kind of not like too recent, but not too old for
Really affects how I view love and relationships. I have this idea that I will never find love.
Las mujeres solamente deben escuchar, solamente teníamos que guardar silencio y escuchar las ofensas, lo que tuviera que decir.
With my father, you never know how he would react to anything. It was just I was born in Mexico City, and I lived with my grandparents and my aunts. The weekends, we went to my parents' house in Cuernavaca, and it was completely different because my father had a temper. My mother was fun. She loved partying, and she was lots of fun, my mother. I don't think that she was unhappy, but she had problems with my father. it's horrible when you see a man yelling and stopping things, dropping things, shouting to everybody. It's very, very upsetting and it stays with you. You never forget that. Never. Never. We never talked with our friends before, like you do now. We never talk about anything with them. Are you happy, mad? Do you have problems? No. Even when she was old, I asked her, tell us about the family, tell us about illness, so we can know exactly how they die. Oh, I don't have to talk about that. It's the past.
Yo nunca recibí un abrazo o una palabra de cariño, un beso de mis padres. Así crecí. La generación de mi mamá, ella también le tocó trabajar de muy pequeña, porque vivían también en una pobreza extrema. Básicamente, con mi papá no podíamos hablar o expresarnos porque las mujeres no deben contestar a sus padres. Sí, la experiencia con mis padres afectó muchísimo porque yo quería tener una familia para sentir el afecto, el amor, pero también tenía mucho miedo de no poder proveer las cosas básicas para mi familia, como es la ropa, zapatos, comida, que es algo básico.
It's, another close-up physically, it was quite cute.
I was born and raised in Boa Heights by two Mexican parents. My mom and my dad's relationship was not a good one. I don't ever think there was a time where they could be together and be good. When I go into forming a relationship with someone, whether it's just a friendship or even a romantic relationship, I always have really big insecurities just because I've never really had a proper showing of what love is.
I found it performative and explain.
I do think machismo played a big role in previous generations' traumas. Women, especially in Mexican culture, are taught that they have to listen to their husband and they have to listen to him and that he knows what's right. They were raised to listen to the men. I think generational trauma is just the effect of everything negative that comes from religion and culture and society. My mom only ever saw an unhealthy relationship. When she got into a relationship, she didn't realize that it was unhealthy.
Part of my brother's problems, it was because of my father. He was very, very, very hard to him. Very hard.
Okay, when did he see?
Yes, my brother, my mother, and me. My brother, he was normal. But the men did in their homes, it was below.
A las mujeres lo que les sucedía, ellas tenían que mantener el silencio hasta la muerte y nunca se sabía de sus cosas.
This was of my mom's parents. Even though that's actually not her biological dad, that's her stepdad, but that's the man that raised her. He was obviously
It is, and with me, I think when my mom's out therapy and she started realizing that like that wasn't okay, she tried to break that cycle with me and my sister.
Que todo ha evolucionado y estamos con más conocimiento sobre el salud mental, entonces ya no es el mismo estigma que había antes. Hoy día yo veo las mujeres como tú, tus hermanas, se expresan abiertamente y con la cara en alto. En nuestros tiempos podíamos expresarnos, pero bajando la mirada.
I definitely do believe our generation can be like the trauma breakers. Women feel a lot safer to leave unhealthy relationships and they know what to look for. There is always that fear, but I do think that hopefully I will be able to break that curse.
Awesome. Francesca was incredible. And now I would like to welcome the panel speakers up to begin. So Jaden, Francesca, Sid, Amina, and Willow, please come up here and take a seat on stage. So I'm going to pass the mic down, and I would like each of you guys to just introduce yourselves, say where you're from, and the area of focus you're going to be talking about. Okay.
Should I start?
Yeah.
Okay. My name is Francesca Corian. I am 17 years old and I go to Palos Verdes Peninsula High. I live in California. And last question is area of interest. And I really love filmmaking overall. I think it's one of the most beautiful and most expressive ways to share something you're very passionate about. And I would say that's my area of interest.
Hi, my name is Vivian Ford, I'm 17. I'm from Washington DC, I go to Falls High School, and today I'm talking about organizing, student organizing, kind of more storytelling.
Hi, my name is Sid Lemondola. I'm 16. I go to Bard High School, Early College, Manhattan, also where I live. I am primarily a writer, and what I primarily focus on is representation, casual representation, specifically and primarily of the LGBTQ community, but casual representation in storytelling in general.
Hello, my name is Jaden Curette. I'm 18. I live in Douglasville, Georgia. I go to Chapel High School, and my primary focus is social injustices in STEM and international injustices.
Hi, I'm Lola Becker. I go to Riverdale Country School in the Bronx, and I live in New York City. I'm 17, and my area of focus is criminal justice and criminal justice reform.
Awesome, guys. Great. So I think we're just going to start down here with Francesca and we can move down the line. But I'm just going to ask you guys a couple of questions, each in your area of interest and focus, and just talk about it, share with the audience. So Francesca, can you share with us your experience making your own film and telling these stories?
Yeah, so in my family, we kind of briefly talked about the trauma that my grandmother faced. And when we talked about it, it was brushed over once again. And for me, I was just like, why are we not discussing this more and more in detail? And then I started this program, Women's Voices Now, and we had to talk about a topic we're passionate about. And all three of us happen to be Mexican women. And all three of us also have stories about generational trauma within our families. And so we were all like talking about our own experiences and then realized we all had very similar stories. And from there, we were like, we need to make this the topic of our movie. And we interviewed my grandma, we interviewed Stephanie's mom, which for me was like definitely the most powerful one because Stephanie's mom, oh my God, that was a second interview, and that was incredibly difficult for us because seeing her cry was like, wow. And then we interviewed Jackie, who was the newest generation, and I think, yeah, just that was like the primary thing that inspired us all.
Gotcha. And I guess, what is one thing you hope resonates with audiences after viewing your film?
Talk about things. I think that's the one thing you guys should get from this movie is everyone suffers from generational trauma, every single person. And the reason it keeps continuing is because nobody talks about it. It's brushed over. And it's seen as something that's, oh, we don't need to talk about it. Just talk about it with your family. Have that difficult discussion because that's when it stops.
Gotcha. And my last question for you is, how do you feel having taken on an active voice, an active role through the film?
I would say I feel pretty proud of myself. It's really fun. I think everyone should try doing something they're passionate about and do it through something you love, whether that's art or like anything, really. And yeah, I'm pretty proud of myself, I would say.
Fantastic. Thank you, Francesca. Amina, you lead an ACLU chapter in Washington, D.C. Can you speak on connecting with the D.C. community and hearing a wide range of social justice stories and voices?
Yeah, so within my school, I run an ACLU chapter, and we work a lot with ACLU DC as a whole. And a big part of ACLU DC is storytelling. So we hold storytelling events for the entire DC community within my school. We have every time that we meet, we have people talk about their experiences that week and kind of see what we can do about them within our school community or the DC community as a whole. That's just a big part of organizing, is getting everyone's stories so we have that personal motivation behind the actual issue.
Great. And how have you seen, I guess, film function as a factor or method of sharing stories of our generation, especially being in DC? You know, DC is the capital, and I guess how has film also played a role in politics in that sense?
I think for film, whenever you see a film become popular, and it's a popular political issue, that issue becomes more prevalent in the news, but also vice versa. So if you see a film, especially like for me, films about Bridgman are very moving. I think that that's also very critical time now. And in DC, just kind of like seeing how people's perspectives have changed over time, and that is in part due to media including them.
Great. Thank you, Amina. Sid, how are you today?
I'm pretty good.
Glad to hear it. So my first question for you today is, how have you seen the LGBTQ community represented in film historically and today?
Oh, I could talk about this forever, but so my primary focus, area of focus and genre in my writing is horror, though I do other genres as well. So an example, you can look to like older movies as an example of awful representation of the LGBTQ community. You have movies like Psycho, which for things that it did, I still love that movie. It's still a revolutionary movie, but so many movies like it have the going through to like the late 80s have the twist reveal of the killer was a trans character all along, and sometimes that's their entire motivation is that they are trans and therefore kill. And unfortunately, that creates a large like trend and idea that is still through to today. I don't know if people know this, but J.K. Rowling, notorious transphobe, recently came out with a crime thriller novel in which it was essentially the same thing. It was like the killer was believed to be a woman and then turned out to be a trans woman. In J.K. Rowling's eyes, a man who was confused about gender and that kind of thing. But as time has gone on, we've certainly seen this start to improve. You have movies that represent other characters of LGBTQ, who identify as LGBTQ in better ways. One I love to bring up is the movie Seed of Chucky, and Chucky's child, alternatively referred to as Glenn or Glenda, is the whole sort of story in that, in their character is during that movie they're sort of trying to figure out how they identify, like in terms of their gender, and also whether or not they want to become a serial killer. So it's sort of played in a funny way, but it's meant to be an exploration of gender. And then in the later Chucky TV series that's currently airing, they refer to Glenda's character. They still use either name, but they refer to them as both gender fluid and queer. So I thought it was very, very interesting and good of them to put an official label on the genders to see how that sort of thing has changed.
Yeah, and so I guess you kind of started to hit on that a little bit, but is there something you want to see more of today? Is there something you want to see changed? And then what does our generation do differently than other generations? How are we unique in this? How are we innovative and revolutionary?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the thing that I want to see more of and changed is something that Gen Z has done a lot more of, which is casual representation. It extends beyond the community. My favorite example to point to of casual representation is Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse and the character of Miles Morales. Because something that always annoyed me and I found very off-putting in film and storytelling in general is that when you have a character who doesn't fit into or who is a member of any sort of minority group, any sort of character who is a straight white cis male, the story has a tendency to be about their identity. Like if you have for example, a black character, the story tends to revolve around the race. And I thought that Spider-Verse was such a great story in terms of casual representation because you have Miles Morales, who is black and Latinx, and that is has nothing to do with the story. The story is about him fighting Kingpin and stopping evil. Because I guess what I'm trying to say is that stories that include characters who are not straight white cis men don't necessarily have to be about their identity. It can be about whatever else the story can be about. And I think that's something Gen Z has done a lot better of, especially as we see more representation in the people who are creating the stories. People will create stories that have people with their identities often. And with that, you see more representation and less focus on their identities as well. It's still important. It's good to see more casual representation.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Sid. Yeah. Jaden, I understand that you've participated in the SMASH program. Can you tell us a little bit about that, what SMASH is, and your experience with social justice from a STEM perspective?
I can. So SMASH is a 3-year holistic STEM program where we take our STEM talents and we look for social injustices and social inequalities. We try to build solutions through STEM for that. As for my experience, it's been fascinating because a lot of times you don't see that how STEM solutions can help in social injustices. For example, last year, a group I was part of, we focused on the inequality in mental health for POC communities, especially Black men, and we created an app using AI to focus on that. So it's very fascinating to see how STEM and just how innovative you can be when it comes to fighting social justice.
Absolutely, yeah, that's incredible. I understand you've been introduced to a wide range of cultures. You grew up in both the United States and Germany. How did you see social justice internationally as well as here locally in Atlanta?
This is a great question I'd love to answer because considering that we live in Atlanta, there's been a lot of civil rights movements, a lot of social injustice movements that started here, and a lot of people assume that that somewhere like Europe is not they're not progressive in the fact that they would work on social justice, and it's quite frankly the opposite. There's a lot of social justice movements because Europe is very progressive, considering that arguably one of the greatest social injustices happened like in World War II in Europe. They're very focused on righting their past, righting the wrongs of the past. So it makes me very happy to see how although Europe and the United States are so far away, they're both moving toward taking the right steps towards facing social justice.
Awesome. And lastly, international cinema has become growingly popular. Did you see any German films detailing social justice in your time there? Any memorable films in general?
Considering I was pretty young when I was over there, I wasn't really watching any social justice films, but later on I went back and I watched a film called Labyrinth of the Lies. It primarily focuses on a prosecutor who is trying to go after former Nazis for their war crimes and their social justice they did against Jewish people specifically. And it's very fascinating to see because the movie focuses on how the older generation tries to forget about that and try to say it's very taboo to talk about the social injustices, but being that he's a younger prosecutor, he says like you have to move on, you have to acknowledge it, you have to put those who did these atrocities, you have to put them away, you have to punish them. And I just really like it because it just fits like the narrative of what goes on today in the world.
Thank you, Jaden. Will, yeah. I understand you're passionate about criminal justice reform. Can you speak on your experience in the sphere and how has film played a role in, I guess, criminal justice reform?
Sure, okay. So a lot of the work that I've done has surrounded the idea that it's really important to look at the criminal justice system from all angles, right? Because at the end of the day, it's not a political issue, it's a human rights issue. So some of the work that I've done, I interned for the DA's office, and I've also worked for a lot of nonprofits. So I've sort of been like an interesting juxtaposition of both worlds, if you will. So that's just some of the work that I've done. And sort of how film has played a role. I'll start with something that you guys know who Brian Stevenson is. He's an American lawyer. So he really emphasizes the idea of gaining proximity to the system, which, as I kind of have just explained to you, is something I've tried to do by looking at the system from multiple angles. I think that media, and film in particular, is one of the best ways to gain proximity to the system. But I don't think these are sentiments that just him or I feel. So one of the organizations that I've worked for this summer is called the Reform Alliance, and it's a probation and parole reform organization. And they have a campaign called the Changing Hearts and Minds campaign, which essentially utilizes film and media to help gain sympathy and empathy from the public on these issues and sort of showcase what some people are going through on probation and parole. And I think I was really struck by a lot of what I saw, and I think that these films sort of they basically just strengthen my convictions that the work that I'm doing is more necessary than ever. So yeah, I think that's why it's important. Not just me, but
Great. And what do you hope to see in the future of criminal justice reform on the horizon, whether it's in the form of laws, protest action, or film?
Well, I think the thing is right now is that there's a lot of conversation about criminal justice reform, right? Like the conversation has been brought to the table. So now I think it's about cultivating a group of entrepreneurs and innovators and critical thinkers who can come up with practical and real solutions to the problem, because we can't just say the system is flawed, but we need to think about what action steps we can take to change that. And further than that, I think it's important to think about how technology and, I guess, people who are at the forefront of innovation right now, how we can utilize that to, I guess, reroute and rebuild the systems that are in place. Like, I'll just give an example. So when I entered at the DA's office this summer, we had to write a policy proposal for how they could have improved, it was for the Manhattan DA, how they could improve the work they were doing. And so my proposal was on how they could come up with a database that basically entered people who were about to be like incarcerated and thinking about how when they get out, they could be matched based on an evaluation to a re-entry program so that they can get the help they needed and they wouldn't be offended because we didn't really have recidivism rates. So it's thinking about things like that and how we utilize technology and I guess the world that we live in now to think about a better way forward.
Awesome. Great, thank you, Willa. Now, I'm just gonna pitch you guys a couple of group questions, and you can pass the mic around accordingly. So the first one is, what do you see for the future role of film in social justice, especially with our generation today?
I think that film, everyone needs to start getting back into film because I feel like right now, especially, it's losing its voice a little bit. And especially film through social justice, I think since more people are becoming activists, which is amazing, and Gen Z is like the voice of change, I think that film now that has a lot of messaging like that is going to be more prominent. It's going to be very good. But I think that in order for that to continue, we need to talk about film more and spread our voices more.
I think that as film is becoming more accessible, the stories that are told becoming more authentic, and we're kind of getting overall like a greater connection within communities through film, especially with the younger generation, even other social media, television, all that's just becoming more accessible.
Yeah, I think a huge thing that's happening, as was mentioned before, is more diverse voices and more voices in general being able to create and consume film. I think that's huge because you have more representation. You also have more different kinds of stories being told. You don't have necessarily the same kinds of people in Hollywood and only in Hollywood making movies. You have anyone with a camera and an idea can make a movie and people will watch it. And I think that allows a lot more voices to be heard, and when more voices are heard, people can start to be inspired to change their minds about things. I think a lot of us, myself included, would have very different worldviews if it weren't for the impact that film has had on us.
So I'm a big proponent of the idea that if you don't understand something, you should always try to research it yourself, and you should try to understand it as much as you can. And to move forward, you have to understand history, you have to understand where you come from. So I feel like films and documentaries specifically help the younger generation and our generation, to any generation, honestly, to understand where we have come from and how we can take the steps to do better. So I feel film is going to become a big proponent of that. It's going to really help just us moving forward and making change.
Yeah, of course. So I guess the last question that I'm gonna ask you guys today is, how have you been personally impacted by film, story of social justice, or both?
Okay, so I think that this generation has really emphasized the emotions of sympathy and empathy, and I think that those are two that I feel really in touch with just individually, and I think that film sort of puts you in touch with those emotions even more, just because having to look at an issue right in the eyes with visual, like seeing something visually makes it really hard to ignore. And so I think that it has, I guess, made me more passionate about the work that I do, but also has made me really intellectually curious about what other people are doing. Like seeing those films now makes me want to learn more. So I just think having to look something in the eyes is a very powerful thing.
Film has had like one of the biggest impacts on me personally, because considering that when I first moved back from Germany to the United States, moved to Georgia, Atlanta specifically, it's a very diverse place, and I tried fitting in with like people who look like me. I was like, they're open to accept me because I look like them, but I was always told I was too proper. I wasn't black enough to be with them. And I kind of fell into like a hard place. I was like, I didn't understand who I was. I didn't understand my identity. I didn't understand why I wasn't accepted. And then watching films, and they helped me understand that there's always gonna be people who try to outcast you, and you just gotta find those people who always accept you. And the film community, you're always gonna find a film that can resonate with you, and that's what I really love, because I always found something that could resonate with me, and honestly help me make more friends too, because you can always find someone who watch the same films as you, or who just sees the impact of films too. So
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I think film has had a huge impact on me, just in a similar way of just exposure to worlds and stories that are not my lived experience. I think that's huge, and especially in terms of like broadening a person's worldview and making someone more like understanding and accepting of other people, or people that have different kinds of stories and lives than you, I think is huge with film. And then in terms of like specific stories, I would regret it greatly if I were on a panel about film and I didn't speak about Jordan Peele for a moment, as he is perhaps probably my favorite filmmaker of all time. As we were speaking about before, like confronting issues directly, I think a huge cultural moment and a huge moment in film was the release of Get Out. I think in terms, especially Jordan Peele spoke about this in terms of looking issues directly in the face. For a lot of like white audiences who watched Get Out, and there was the scene where Chris is at this sort of like gathering where everyone is talking to him, and they say a lot of like microaggressions to him. There's a part that Jordan Peele spoke about where he said the horror for white audiences was realizing, oh no, I've said that. And I think that's something that you wouldn't get to see. You wouldn't get to have that experience and that kind of understanding of, oh, maybe this is something that is bad or something I shouldn't say to people, if you don't have people like Jordan Peele, or if you only have like like cis white rich men making movies, you wouldn't have a movie like Get Out. You wouldn't have the experience of like there are of different points of view other than the cis straight white male protagonists.
I think of film as a communal thing, which is our families and our friends, and kind of for discussion, like seeing these issues on screen, and us talking about them with our family, our friends, and our community, getting us to change things about our own communities. I think that kind of like film can come together and get us to organize around issues and make real change.
Yeah, I completely agree with what everyone said. I think film is one of the most powerful things, like I said before, and for me, I've grown up watching film like my entire life, and one of my favorite films that talks about social justice would be Sorry to Bother You. I think there are films like that where it's just so powerful because it's done in such a creative way, and I think that's one thing that film does that no other genre could do. Film is something that you listen to, you see. It's an experience that nothing can compare to film. I think, especially when you're going into like a movie theater and seeing a movie for the first time, it's just like you can't describe that feeling.
Thank you guys. It's a round of applause. So I'm going to introduce our next film now. Our next two films actually, from an organization called By Kids. By Kids is a nonprofit organization based out of New York, and we're fortunate enough to have their director and founder, Holly Carter, here with us today. What By Kids operates to do is they put cameras in the hands of students around the world, whether they are in Sudan, whether they are in Bhutan, anywhere. They give these kids a camera, they teach them how to use the camera, and they tell their stories. And the two films we're going to see today, one of them is based out of New York, the other out of Germany, deal with juvenile justice and anti-Semitism. Our first film today is I Can Tell You About My Life, mentored by filmmakers Tini Kurosawa and Hollis Memminger. 19-year-old Michael Martin reflects on his incarceration on Rikers Island and the effect it had on his life. On April 10th, 2017, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo signed a law inspired by the Raise the Age movement, and New York is now raising the age of criminal responsibility to 18 years old, no longer prosecuting and incarcerating 16-year-old and 17-year-olds as adults. When Michael got arrested at the age of 17, this law did not exist. As a result, the judge sentenced him to jail time on Rikers Island. In crafting I Can Tell You About My Life, Michael recounts events that led up to his incarceration. He describes being bored, hanging out with the wrong crowd, and interviews his 64-year-old grandmother about raising 5 children in a single bedroom in East Harlem. When Michael asks his grandmother Cynthia about how she became his guardian, she recalls how his mother had problems. And in order to avoid Michael falling into foster care, she told that social worker, "I was taking you home with me." She describes a monthly $231 from the Human Resources Administration and wages earned during 12-hour shifts. Cynthia fed and clothed Michael and his siblings. As Michael narrates this journey, he raps the chorus from a song he wrote. A couple of young ones, always breaking rules, never staying true, just the summertime blues. Yeah, I barely even know my mother, always played the block with those was my brothers. Because where I'm from, we don't switch on each other. Using a percussion track as a minimalist score, Michael used his rhymes and a go-go to document his story. This is the By Kids intro, followed by I Can Tell You About My Life.
Can you hear me? I said, can you hear me? Hi.
Mi nombre es María Ceballos. And I met this movie.
But do I only hear what you say? Everybody speaks for the youth. Nobody hears what the youth say. It's a new day for these boys and these girls. Can't pacify their noise with toys and cheese curls. Simple expression, then calm when stormy. Only if he can tell his mom this story, maybe we can avoid his alarming story on the evening news. And if that voice bottled in could be diffused, that young girl being abused by the ones she trusted could be rebuilt instead of self-destructing. The youth shouldn't have to wait until their 30s, 40s to have a platform for us, by us, to tell their stories. That child in trafficking, living unsafely, could be that hope, that helper, the one to save me, if given a voice, just maybe, just maybe. Can you hear me?
I can tell you about my life. I can tell you never pick and choose. Couple of us did it right. Few of us done broke the rules. I used to chill outside on the block. I've been locked up. I've been shy. I think it's important to tell people your story. Why? Because you never know. Like, everybody got a different point of view, and sometimes that point of view can help the next person. It's a chance to speak about how you feel in life. Basically, just establish a connection. My name is Michael. Everybody call me Mike. 19 years old. I live in East Harlem. Born and raised, still here. So I know East Harlem. I feel like it's not easy. I just pull up on the block and it's normal. They just come from the kickers off the block. You don't got a schoolyard to go hang with. Right now, we only got one court. The other court was definitely taken away from us. There was certain situations where stuff was stolen. They took that part away from us. So we can't play ball, going off the chill, no nothing. When people get bored, they find other stuff to do.
What's your name?
Cynthia C. Gaines,
What is your relationship to me?
your grandmother.
Loosen up, look, still.
I just want to get her.
How did you become my guardian?
Well, Michael, this is a long story. The circumstances I was not like to go into, my mother, she had problems, and I couldn't see myself letting her go into foster care. I had to go to family court. I put up a little argument, and I told the social worker that I'm taking my grandson home. That's how I wanted to do. I raised 5 grandchildren in a 1-bedroom apartment. I worked 12 hours a day from 8 to 8. The little bit of money that HRA gave us was not enough. For 5 kids, I was getting $231 to buy clothes, shoes, and coats.
Was it hard raising us 5?
couple youngins always breaking rules. Never staying true, just the summertime blues. Hot in the winter, cold in the summer. Drop top cool, yeah, I'm in the Hummer. Yeah, I barely even know my mother. Always played the block, but those was my brothers. Cause where I'm from, we don't switch on each other.
I taught you when you was 5 years old, we used to walk down this block every day, and we used to see police getting people in handcuffs. I said, Michael, this is not how you want to live your life. But as soon as you turn 16, Michael, that's when you got in trouble.
Everybody gonna try to be like Macho Man. Movie like Scarface. He had a lot of money. He felt like he's untouchable. Some people just want to feel like that. At a point in time, I was just at the I didn't care about nothing stage. I got caught up in the wrong crowd.
It was me, some group kids, youth boy had nothing to do. It was a bad thing to do, but I think they kind of gave me months. I just sat at home like, hey, let's do it.
I didn't find out that until the next day, because I was trying to figure out why he was coming home that night. Everybody called everybody, but nobody came in and told me. When I found out, my heart went to the floor. They told me that you were gonna have court the next day. I just pray that you don't have to
I went out to the courtroom and the judge gave me $40,000 bail. From there, I already knew I was going to practice.
If you can't afford bail, whether they find you guilty or not guilty, they still send you to practice.
Practice itself is just nasty. There's a lot of things in there that was nasty. People in general, CO.
When you get arrested, they say like you are now a slave. You gotta do whatever we tell you to do. Say if I was like in there and I was to get into a fight. Whether I started the fight or not, I'm getting sprayed. Other kid getting sprayed. If we getting sprayed with the thing that we use on bed is the bed type, you use that on an ambulance. So for you to use that on a human being, it's like foul business. They throw you in a pen. It's called the forget about it pen. It's barely any cameras. No matter what you do, like if a guard beat on you and it's not able to be shown, they're not gonna take their word for it. You're a criminal. They don't give a damn about you. But at the end of the day, you gotta watch your own back in jail. So if I gotta fight every day because every way y'all put me, I gotta fight, and I can't get phone calls and this, it's messing me up.
I don't want to say his name, but like certain kid went through that and wound up killing himself over it, like it's bad. I mean, if you go and take kids from their home, at least don't do what you do in jail. Like don't come spray them, beat them down, put them in tight ass restraints. At least if you're gonna take them away, do something for them. When they bored like that, that's when they pop to do dumb stuff. There's nothing to do.
If you didn't label me as this certain thing, people want to see it that way. I want to be able to be known and recognize who I am.
I know what I did, and I definitely paid the price for it. I'm trying to move on.
How would you say that I changed in the last couple of years?
You went from being a bad boy to a good boy. You learn how to understanding what other people are saying.
Why did you come and help me when I was with you?
Because it was my grandson, I love him. I didn't want him to go to jail. Plus, you was here to help me. When I go shopping, I need somebody to make me shopping, go upstairs, go to the laundry, go to the store, we do little things that I needed. Take me to the doctor sometimes when I don't feel good. I was not letting me stay in jail.
Do you think incarceration is a productive way to reform youth offenders?
I do not believe that incarceration is a productive way to reform youthful offenders. I think there's a lot of things that go into becoming a man or becoming a mature individual. There's a lot of learning that takes place, whether it's academic, whether it's maturity, whether it's social, whether it's emotional, whatever it may be. And sometimes being incarcerated takes away from a lot of that.
Can you imagine a solution better than incarceration?
There is no one solution because you're dealing with people's lives and you have to address individual factors that brought them to where they are, such as mental health, substance abuse. So there's no one answer to incarceration. However, I am a very firm believer in education over incarceration. In Ivy League education, monetarily is equivalent to the incarceration cost of one individual for a year.
After I got locked up, I thought about everything. Gotta graduate, gotta do something. Like, just everybody, you never know when your time will be.
One of the things that I used to do, I used to go to Rikers Island and tell, the guys there about the different programs and stuff that we offer once you're back in the community. And I remember you being one of those guys. You always stuck out of my head because one of the things you told me was that as soon as you come home, you're gonna come see me, you're gonna come to my school. I was impressed when you actually did.
I came to Friends Island, I got a role.
I think very like sort of mirrors a lot of the people we get in the world. I think when you go on kind of success in life, it just showing that they can do it as well.
The advice I would give kids is that positions in the school or attend the GED, and really they can open doors for themselves.
I could tell you one thing, I would never run. Tell you run, catch me in the sun, I am never done. Tell you change the system. Tell you change the world. If I took my turn a little, it would change the way we live, it's a miracle. I could tell you about my life. I could tell you never pick the tools. Couple of us did it right. Few of us done broke the rules. Change the way I used to life. Mama told me never be a fool. Get the chicken up to stand school. Nothing young and breaking rules. Breaking rules.
You have any thoughts about the juvenile justice?
Yeah, I think I think, you're better to answer that question. What are your thoughts? Yeah, I think the goals of our work are small in ways. Like, I think teaching you the piano, like, really not that much that I can do for you other than those like little things. And we really hope that those little things lead to something within you.
Can you imagine any solutions to the current juvenile system?
I think that, when I say like there should be a world without prisons, that sounds extreme and maybe scary and maybe impossible. It takes work to do that imagining, but I think that what you ask, this conversation is really important, and I think those are the conversations that we should be having.
And what I tell myself every day is that what we're hoping to do is build resilience, and that we can build that resilience to a point where you can be leaders for the future, because you're the best people to lead. Every single music workshop, we were always the first one to participate in it. We were really, really talented, and that actually inspired me very much to want to do open mic nights, because I saw so much potential in so many of the young people, including yourself.
We have so many talented people on our staff and youth members as well. And so we want to give everybody a platform to show what they got.
How can a superpower have such a low educational system? What do we gotta do so Howard could have the same reputation as Princeton? How come we ain't have room in the class for everybody to sit, yet the penitentiary got room for everybody to fit? Talk to me, man.
As land, my love has come along, my lonely days are over, and life is but a song. Oh, yeah, yeah, at last.
I can tell you about my life. I can tell you never pick and choose. Type of love I did it right. We were about to turn both the rules. Change the way I do the life. Mama told me never be a fool. Nigga chicken out the same school. Fuck young niggas always break the rules.
Even if you take 3 steps forward and then maybe 1 step back, those 3 steps are really what I want to focus on. And that's ultimately what your supervision has been, whether it's been education, whether it's been employment, or whether it's been community programs. What matters more is that you're accomplishing the things that you focus on, and you're pursuing them and you're staying focused on them until they're completed.
Just recently, I was hired by a creative arts firm to paint a mural in the Bronx. The mural that we designed was about struggling unity. The dog was like unity, peace. We painted it with lily pads and boy and a girl. And then we had 2 mandalas drawn on the side, one was for peace and one was for unity. And we drew the storm. The storm was basically about struggle. Everybody goes through a point in time where everybody's struggling. It's not one person in this world that got it easy. It was probably my first on book job, but it was fun though. And eventually I'm gonna keep building on that. I'm getting the power that I need to buy. And there's so much stuff that I'm doing, it's positive. I'm gonna do something that's gonna mess myself. Certain opportunities, once you got that, they look at you like you got stuff together. Let's plug you in here, see where you're about, you work hard, you get stuff done, and they'll work with you. And then there's always another organization high up, and then you pop, basically.
What I hope in like the next 2-3 years is that like I can move out, have my own job, my car, hopefully like good, like, a career coming on. I don't wanna say like I wanna be rich, but I wanna be able to like pay for my needs.
Someone gave me an opportunity to learn about what it is that I wanted to do, which was to be a percussionist. My teacher was into me. He was working with Miles Davis at the time. He gave me an opportunity, and I'm trying to give back by giving opportunities to other people. I have been a session musician, a producer, writer. I came up playing on many records, and fortunately I have a long history of working with artists from Michael Jackson to Madonna. Everybody has something a message that they want to deliver inside of them, and their life story comes out in what it is that they love to do. Yeah, man, that's beautiful. Here we go. How you feeling? Comfortable? Yeah, a little rehearsal.
Every time I hear a certain beat, like I get a feeling, like a hype feeling. All you just gotta know is like how to put certain stuff together. But I want you to feel where I'm coming from, and hopefully you can probably relate to it. Skipping school, breaking rules. Skipping school, breaking rules. Couple youngins always breaking rules, never staying true. Just summertime blues. Hot, no winter, cold in the summer. Drop top cool. Yeah, I'm in a Hummer. Yeah, Billy, even know my mother always played the block butters with my brothers. Cause where I'm from, we don't switch on each other. Oh, I forgot.
Should I start back? Come on.
Nah, yeah, keep right there. That's a good spot.
Just punch him in for the future, punch him. You gotta give off space. The energy has to go up a little bit more, all right? Everything is great, though. Sounds wonderful, man.
Cause my other man, that's my other man. 100 grand, can we get these bands? Do the running man, never took a stand, never took the chance till I hit the can. I could never jam, tell them change the system, tell them change the rules. If I took my foot, turn political, change the way we live, it's a miracle.
Nice.
So, like how I was coming on, like how I come on, like I could tell you about my life instead of doing that. I could tell you about my life.
That's right. That's right. You can drop it back a little less. Yeah. And remember to get back to that feeling.
I know what you're saying. I heard it.
Okay, wanna just do it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No dough in my pocket. Tell some last team rockin'. Digital whales. I don't do favors. Use the haters. Say I'm a favor. Shit, they stack like blue sleep. The pro gon' feel like a cookie. Was a veteran, choose a rookie. I'm a future. Please don't push me for the future. Don't push me. I can tell you about my life. I can tell you never pick and choose. Couple of us did it right. You a bust down, broke the rules. Change your way and lose your life. Mama told me never be a fool. Get your chicken up and stay in school. Couple youngins always breaking rules. I can tell you about my life. I can tell you never pick and choose. Couple of us did it right. You a bust down, broke the rules. Change your way and lose your life. Mama told me never be a fool. Get your chicken up and stay in school. Couple youngins always breaking rules. Skipping school. Breaking rules. Skipping school. Breaking rules. Skipping school. Skipping school. Breaking rules. Skipping school. Breaking rules.
And now, if you look at this young man, you would never think that he got nothing done. This is what you gotta do. Stay out of trouble. Come home. And listen to the family.
What do you see that I don't see in, that I may not see in myself?
I see hope. I see love. I see everything in you. I hope you can see it in yourself. You will be you.
You know where you're going? I'm going to take a test. You go test. So you did. Oh, yeah. Ready? You gonna kill it? Yeah.
skip school.
Summertime too. Hot in the winter, cold in the summer. Drop top school. Yeah, I'm in a hurry. Yeah, there is a number one. I always play the block. I look for my brothers, cause when I'm from, we don't fool each other. Go draw my pocket. Touch on right to right. Get your weight up. I'll go the other. Use the haters to get on my favor.
Awesome. Great. That's a very moving, very powerful film. Next up, we have Mihail. And Mihail is also from Five Kids Organization. And 19-year-old Simon Shabaev is a part of a thriving Jewish community in Berlin, Germany. Despite his country's dark history, Shabaev embraces his religious and cultural heritage as the last generation Holocaust survivors fades, a new wave of Jews, including Shabaev's family, has immigrated to the country that attempted to eradicate them. He interviews community leaders, friends, and rabbis, observes a remembrance service, and facilitates a cross-cultural workshop as he examines German Jewish identity. Mentored by filmmaker Anja Baron, he shines a light on resurgent Jewish life in Germany at a time of rising worldwide anti-Semitism. Today, the world is seeing a rise in anti-Semitism. The Anti-Defamation League reports that the number of anti-Semitic incidents and assaults on Jews and Jewish institutions in the United States has doubled in the last year, and that 1 billion people harbor anti-Semitic attitudes. His parents immigrated to Germany from Russia in the 1990s, and his film dives into the question of identity, of feeling both German and Jewish, addressing the historic burdens of guilt, and the historic burden and guilt of the Holocaust carried by his adopted country. Simon explores German Jewish identity and the Holocaust by examining silent memorials, active remembrance, and daily echoes of the Holocaust in everyday life in Berlin. He focuses on efforts to both understand anti-Semitism and find ways not to repeat it, find ways not to repeat the past. At the same time, he introduces us to a lively community of young German Jews who enjoy celebration of their rich heritage and culture. This is Mihail.
Anyone ever asks me when they find out I'm Jewish is, you're Jewish and you live in Berlin, Germany, of all places. All the young Jews in Germany have a really big task because we are the people, they must tell other people from other countries why we're living in Germany, why we're living in this place where we was killed by the Germans. It has always been a dream of mine to show Jewish life in modern-day Berlin, navigating the past while living in the present. My name is Simon Shabaev. I'm 19 years old, and I'm a young Jew from Berlin, Germany. From an early age on, I was taught to respect my elders and to love and honor my Jewish faith. Because of our Jewish faith, my father decided to leave the former Soviet Union and had to choose between the US, Israel, and Germany. He decided to go to Germany, even despite Germany's dark past. He believed in the country, and he also believed in the opportunity he would get to start a new life here in Germany. The family is the most important thing to me. They helped me to become this person who I am today. My mother is not only my mother, she's my best friend too.
Meinem Sohn Simon ist die jüdische Religion sehr wichtig. Deutschland bot den Juden die Möglichkeit, in den 90er Jahren wieder nach Deutschland zurückzukommen.
Anna is my sister, and she's almost like a twin. She's only 1 year younger. She's my better half. I love her so much. She's also very creative, plays the piano, and composes her own pieces.
Being a Jew in Germany offers you a lot of opportunities. I can live my Jewish personality and I can show that I'm Jewish, I'm proud to be Jewish. It's important to keep Jewish roots because we're a nation and we've been going through so much. Despite this hard history and this hard time we've been going through, We build up a big community.
I think the life gives you two families. The one you are born with, and the other one you choose by yourself.
Jakob is my best friend. Anna, he and I are kind of inseparable.
Every time, if you look at the picture, I'm always smiling, but my sister not. I'm smiling at you. Yeah, because I'm not here.
I wanted to include Jakob and Anna in this film because together we not only represent the younger generation of German Jews, but each of us brings different aspects to the heart of this film in a way that no one person can, because the subject really is bigger than all of us. I was always very shy and introverted. I started building walls around me to protect myself. But when I was 11 years old, I joined a group of Jewish youngsters who invited me to visit a Jewish youth center. Being with other Jewish kids every Sunday helped me feel more self-confident. So today, I wanted to introduce our Jewish youth center called Olam, where we get together every Sunday. Olam has played an important part in my life.
Why is Olam important? We give possibilities to the kids here that they don't get every day, because not every Jewish child is in a Jewish elementary school or a Jewish high school. And we give them the possibility every Sunday to learn something about Judaism, to meet new Jewish friends, to learn something about history, about Jewish traditions. I personally find the youth center is one of the most important departments of the Jewish community in Berlin. The kids that come here become later members of the Jewish community, principals and teachers in the schools, and some of them also go to the Israeli army. It all begins in Olam.
Today, I work as a youth or a youth guide. I see myself not so much as a teacher, but as a big brother, and I consider it my duty to guide these young people and to pass on our traditions to the next generation.
What will we celebrate next week? Yeah.
Our celebration is the independence of Israel.
Right. And how we celebrate this?
I will go to synagogue and we celebrate like a birthday of Israel.
Right. Yom Ha'atzmaut is the birthday of Israel. Hey guys, thank you for your attention, and we know something, right? Okay, all
Today we interview Rabbi Yoshua Spin. He's been living and working in Berlin for almost 20 years and really knows all about the Jewish community. I have a lot of questions for him.
There's no question that there's been a resurgence or even a renaissance of Jewish life in Berlin. And there were a number of things that Germany undertook. And one of those things was a commitment to rebuilding Jewish life. It seemed to me that Germany has done a significant job in trying to come to terms with the past and in trying to ensure that it, not its Jews, but it is fundamentally different. So if you ask me, am I concerned about anti-Semitism in Germany today in a way that affects my life now? No. In a way that may affect my life in 10 or 20 years and put a question mark over this entire project then? Yes, definitely. The people who feel today German and Jewish are not making the claim that they are German Jews. They're making the claim that they are German and Jewish, and these things are not contradictory or they're comfortable with both. So it's kind of a new thing. Of course, living in Germany, tragedies that happened more recently, but also the important and exciting and positive things that happened in Germany and in Europe over the 1,000 years of the history of Jewish people. We were an unbelievable intellectual history. The amount of scholarship of the Torah that took place in this country is astounding. From the 11th century straight through till shortly before the Second World War and the Holocaust. Right, from a German perspective, perhaps what's extraordinary is that some level of forgiveness has been possible and some level of change has been possible, and that there is a different country today than the one that existed before, and that enough Jews feel comfortable living here, certainly relative to other places in the world, that they do live here. That's one piece of the story. From the Jewish perspective, what's extraordinary is almost, it's a mirror image of that, is the incredible resilience of our people. The importance of being here, not for German society, but for the rest of Jewish society, is such a clear and compelling sense of mission and purpose that it outweighs any insecurities. When the room here and the children here look and act and sing and engage and observe, just like Jewish kids in London, just like Jewish kids in New York, that matters. That's important.
In Berlin, we can never escape the past. Past and present always live side by side.
Here was once the Berlin Wall. And then you can see it actually on the side.
For me, it's important to do a tour of historical Jewish sites. The sites are a good way for people to honor the fate of millions of Jewish people who died during World War II. And there's no better person to take us around than Jakob. Jakob is like an expert in all things German and Jewish. To me, it's important to know the history of our country. We all know about the past, especially National Socialism, because it's so important to remember this time. There are monuments everywhere.
Standing here, it's just a horrible feeling. When I think about it, that the stones symbolize dead people, I get goosebumps.
When you walk through Berlin and you see this memorial, when you look up, you see the Heritage flag on its embassy. And when you look straight, you see the German flag on the Reichstag. You can see actually the whole German history of the past 8 years. This is a very emotional place. It's in the center of Berlin. It's in the heart of Germany. It's in the heart of Europe. It's reminding us always the worst genocide in history happened in the last century here in Germany.
Between 1941 and 1945, Track 17, which was once a regular train track and part of the Grünwald station in Berlin, became the train track from which Jews were deported to concentration camps in Eastern Europe, including Auschwitz. In October 1991, the track was turned into a memorial site. The steps up to the tracks are the very same steps taken by those who were brought here to be deported.
Here in Grünewald, in Borel, where there is a lot of Jewish people, where there used to be even more Jewish people, they were literally taken from their homes, from their home train station, to the last days of their lives.
The ground you walk on is the ground where people walk on. It's an eerie feeling.
You know, for the people here, it used to be also just common, this normal place where they came to catch a train, to take a trip somewhere for something completely daily, from one day to another. It changed during the Holocaust. Today, this is a train station as it used to be, except for this platform, which is it's part of the German remembrance culture. That you shall never forget what happened in the past. It's undoubtedly true that there is a rise to anti-Semitism in the present day. Thank God I don't experience it personally, but it's still an important matter we have to face.
We must understand what is anti-Semitism.
I think the people always need a victim group or a group who are weaker than themselves.
Minority.
Yeah, it's always a minority.
People think our Jewish people, they're so rich. The people
the world stories. So you can see what all this anti-Semitism can lead to, actually. We're sitting on a place like this, where the anti-Semitic people finally got to power and started not only to discriminate, but to kill.
I was born in this country, as a German and a Jew. It is important to me to show how this country is dealing with its dark past, and not just with silent memorials, but actively remembering the dead. It is Holocaust Remembrance Day, and it's a grey, dark, January day. The concentration camp is exactly 60 minutes from my home. 18 years ago, a few miles away from Berlin, people were murdered in the worst possible ways because of their beliefs. Looking at this place and thinking about what happened, it makes me doubt humanity. Until 1945, the Sachsenhausen concentration camp was the one camp of all other camps. It was built at a time when the world press was distracted watching the 1936 Olympics, which took place only a few miles away in Berlin. Every year, Germany marks International Holocaust Remembrance Day. This year, more than 18 years after the November programs, also known as the Kristallnacht or Crystal Night, the Jews who were taken from their homes in Berlin on that night, are being remembered in a special ceremony.
Am 9. November 1938 brannten in Deutschland die Synagogen. Das Novemberpogrom war der Anfang des Völkermordes an den europäischen Juden. Die deutsche Kultur hat sie nicht davon abgehalten. Es ist geschehen und folglich hat es wieder geschehen. Unsere Zeit ruft danach, ein neues Miteinander zu finden, ein Zusammenleben ohne Hass, ohne Rassismus, Diskriminierung und Ausgrenzung.
Moritz Marx, Siegfried Gold, Gustav Hertzhausen, Isaac Laut, Sally Löwenstein, Samuel Reich,
Samuel Kummer, Otto Schulze, Richard Mille,
Oskar Jonas, Heinz Klopstock, Max Gold, Kurt Kamm, Viktor Lauer,
Markus Anne, Friedrich Böhm, Kurt Wagner, Jan Lachs, Herbert Kohl.
As Germans, we learn about the Holocaust from early age on. It becomes part of our identity. And it always ends with the same motto: never again and never forget.
The significance of this day to me personally is that we are from Germany and this is Germany's history. We have to remember this history because we are the next generation, we are the future.
When you walk the sidewalks of Berlin, you will notice special golden stones on the ground. These are so-called Stolpersteine. The name literally means stumbling stones. These golden stones are placed into the sidewalks in front of the very buildings the Jews are deported from and bearing their names. I think having memorials is one thing, but putting a name to the endless numbers of deported and murdered Jews is another. They deserve to be remembered by name and on a daily basis. This project was conceived by German artist Günter Demnig.
There are many central monuments. We know it's a bit of a big monument, but it's anonymous. But the names and here not anywhere. So if you see a stone you want to leave, you have to go. And I think it's very important for all those relatives. Because now there's a place that can remember. Many of them, most of them, don't have to wait them at place stones.
While most stones commemorate the names of Jews who died in concentration camps, today's ceremony is dedicated to Jews who survived. Howard Schadner, the son of Holocaust survivor Max Schadner, sent words to be read for the ceremony.
Dear His Holiness, I would like to thank you all for coming
and I try to go regularly morning to participate in this very special event, the installation of Stolpersteine for the Holocaust survivors. My father, the Schuldig Schattner, and his two brothers, Earl and Jacob. It was 6 o'clock in the morning, at October 28, 1938, when a loud knocking sounded at the family's front door. At the door was the police with an order to arrest everybody. They were taken, placed on a train, transported to the Polish border, and expelled from the country. For the next 9 years, they lived as refugees. Finally, they emigrated to university, where they began their new life.
Many neighbors also attended 2 current residents, a Jewish couple from Russia who lives in the very same building Max Shetner used to live in, comes to pay their respects to the newly laid stumbling stones.
Ich wohne in dieser Wohnung und diese schönen Leute wohnen in dieser Wohnung und jetzt ich bin sehr, sehr leid an diese Zeit.
The stumbling stones to me represent, yes, another way to remember the past while living in the present.
I think Stolpersteine are a symbol for us because 6 million Jewish people is a very big number, and one name or kids rename to see, that's how I feel.
For some people, it's unbelievable to see police officers standing outside Jewish buildings. But for me, it's a normal thing. Berlin city government offers police protection to all Jewish institutions around Berlin. Recently, anti-Semitism has once again become a more prominent issue, both in Germany and worldwide. It is important for me to talk about anti-Semitism. Today, we are at the Central Council of Jews in Germany. The Central Council recently implemented a new program called Die Kreuz. It's a program designed to educate young Jews between the ages of 15 and 19 about Judaism.
Mit Die Kreuz haben wir ein Programm entwickelt, bei dem wir es schaffen, Antisemitismus entgegenzuwirken und da den Menschen in den Vordergrund zu stellen, den Latino oder die Latina als eine authentische Person, die Judentum auf ihre Art und Weise lebt, und zu zeigen, das ist einer genauso wie du und ich.
With this program, we visit seminars where we learn how to convey the principles of Judaism to people who are not Jewish. Schools can request to have the Latinas come to their school to talk about Judaism. That's why I signed up for the class, to become a so-called Latino. Our goal is to build bridges with non-Jewish population and to address any prejudice or outright anti-Semitism. I feel it's important to show that we are all just normal people, just with different faiths, and that is okay. But that most of my generation doesn't blame young Germans for what their ancestors did.
Im Jahr 2021 werden wir 1700 Jahre jüdisches Leben in Deutschland feiern. Und heute sind wir in einer Zeit, in einer Situation, wo wir eine starke jüdische Gemeinschaft haben, wo wir selbstbewusste jüdische Jugend haben. Eine Jugend, die sich zum einen zu ihrem jüdischen Glauben, zu ihren jüdischen Wurzeln bekennt und sich dessen bewusst ist, und auf der anderen Seite mit beiden klar zu ihrem Land, zu Deutschland stehen. Das ist eine Besonderheit, was vielleicht für die Großeltern der Juden vielleicht sogar völlig unverständlich ist, wie man sich dann zu diesem Land in der Form auch bekennen kann. Das ist eine Entwicklung, wo auch innerhalb jüdischer Gemeinschaft gezeigt wird, ja, wir sind hier zu Hause, wir sind bereit, an diesem gesamten großen deutschen Haus bereit zu bauen und ein Teil dessen zu sein und unsere Beitrag zu leisten.
One of the highlights for our youth center is to prepare for a singing and dancing contest called Eurovision. I have been taking part in Eurovision ever since I was 12 years old. This year, I'm not performing at Euro, but I'm here to make a behind-the-scenes video check.
Eurovision is the biggest competition hosted by the Central Council of the Jews in Germany for Jewish kids all over Germany.
Every year, we get to the event on Friday afternoon and celebrate Shabbat together. Everybody loves Eurovision because you connect with young Jews from all over Germany. Some Jewish people of my generation often feel we need to remember, yes,
But is it not also time to move on? Live in the present and look to the future.
What we achieved despite our past. The Jewish life exists in Germany, and that's the important thing.
Let's get out from this victim road. Of course, the history has dark parts, but being Jewish here and showing that we are still here, we will not leave this country because it's ours too, as well as yours, is an act of power.
When somebody asks me, do you feel more Jew or do you feel more German? I can't answer those questions because I'm both. And I love to be both. This year was more exciting than ever. After preparing for Eurovision all year, we ended up winning first prize. It was an absolutely amazing feeling. But the most amazing thing was that despite the competition, there was an incredible sense of togetherness among us young Jews in Germany. To me, that's the biggest prize of all. Finally, I would like to welcome our final speaker and closing keynote of the evening, Nigel Sapp. Nigel, alumnus of Duke University, a Georgia native, majored in cinematic arts while at Duke. Through his art, he hopes to capture the utter visual significance of the African American body, as well as the profound visual history made by, for, and against African American people. Nigel, we are all excited to hear your perspective on the intersection between film and social justice.
Thank you, Jack. Appreciate that. Can everyone hear me? Excellent. All right. Good evening, younger people. I say younger because I'm just 22. And if you turn this next slide, there we go. Yeah, that was me, like when I was your age. So more recent than I would like it to be. Don't worry, don't let the current fool you. I got the mustache beard from last Thursday. So underneath all this is still that. But alas, with the years that separate you and I would like to impart some wisdom. 4 years ago, as much of the country was still riding the wave of the success of Black Panther, and people I knew were falling more in love with Black Wakandans than they were with Black me, or conversely, we're finding reason to hate Black Wakandans as much as they hated her. Or, yeah, as much as they hate being Black and all. I stumbled into a small room at the High Museum. There, projected heavily, was a film titled Love is the Message is Death, by filmmaker Arthur Jaffa. Next slide. It was remarkable. Absent any dialogue or plot, the 7-minute ode to the enduring brilliance of Black America, rendered in scenes of ballroom culture, police brutality, athletic excellence, civil disobedience, and more, seemed to capture all of the emotions that had bubbled up within me for 18 years. This is much less a film and more a mirror. And to my left, the tears of my friend who was not Black. She was Lebanese and of Arabic descent, and so because of that, I knew she knew the language of strife. Said all that needed to be said. For once, we were seeing Blackness in its distilled purity. She was seeing me I was seeing myself. It was unlike anything I'd ever seen. I believe that love is the message is death, was the embarkation point from which I sailed into loving film more fully. And that all began as I began to embrace independent, experimental, and international cinema. More precisely, everything that Hollywood is. When you abandon the hope that Hollywood will come close to bringing you the fulfillment of your identities, you will end up on the greenest pastures, finding films of all kinds that speak to you as a studio never could. It is here that you will do true justice. First to yourself, by reconciling with your own experience, and second unto others in recognizing the diversity of theirs. The first day I met my favorite film professor, she promised our class she would dismantle our existing notions of film canon. That was a claim. And I am so thankful she did. In a year under her tutelage, we watched films from Turkey, Japan, Austria, Philippines, Iran, Tunisia. Films that almost barely make a beep. A film so loud and annoying I heard it in my dreams. Films, next slide. Films so nasty, Polyester, John Waters. A satire of American living done by the amazing choreographer John Waters. So Frightening, next slide. Funeral Parade of Roses, directed by Toshio Matsumoto. A story of a young Japanese trans woman. It follows the Oedipus tale. If you know about Oedipus Rex, you can make some guesses as to where that knife is going to go. And simply so strange or painful, next slide, that you wouldn't believe. 1 year performance by Tetching Sei, quick interlude. This performance here, Tetching Sei did endurance art, and so to make this, he took from April 11th, 1980 to April 11th, 1981, he took a picture of himself every hour of every day and punched a time card, and these are the 8,760 whatever time cards for every hour that he punched. And he took all those frames and created it and made it into one. I even watched a film that was all blue, slide, fitting title. And when it comes as a surprise that one of the best movies I've ever seen, slide, featured the director holding a piece of blank white paper over the camera lens for 30 minutes. Foyer, directed by Ismail Bari. Every week I was transfixed, and more importantly, amazed by my ignorance. I took a film class in high school, and for us, pushing the boundaries was watching Hitchcock. These were entirely new worlds to me, and I craved them. I still do. And perhaps I should have known I was in for a treat when the first film Felicity showed us after making her claim was the 1991 movie Daughters of the Dust. This story of a Gullah family's preparation to move to mainland America made Black look beautiful. Made Black look beautiful in ways I thought maybe only Moonlight would ever accomplish. The film was the first. This is important. This film was the first feature film ever directed by a Black woman to be distributed in U.S. theaters. 1991. And now is preserved in the Library of Congress, a credit to its director and product of the LA Rebellion filmmaking group, Julie Dash. The film's beautifully impactful imagery would not have been possible if not for the work of the cinematographer and director of photography, a becoming artist moonlighting as Julie Dash's ex-husband. Next slide, Arthur Jaffa. Here's what I'll say. Hollywood will never make films for you and I. But Nigel, what do you mean? I disagree. I watched Everything Everywhere All at Once, and that was amazing. I agree. It was amazing. Or what about Coda, Parasite, Moonlight, or Coco? No, wait. I get it. I'm not denying the brilliance of these films and their capabilities to bring visibility to so many swaths of people at one time. But you must agree with me that their cadence is peculiar, no? Every year it feels as though we are presented with one or two films that bring to light the trials of one identity or another before the deck is reshuffled, lots are drawn again, and we wait to see what group will have their time in the limelight the year following. Never mind that intersectionality exists, but it seems that the industry is finally coming around to that notion. Remember, Hollywood movies are meant to sell, and traditionally and historically, Blackness, brownness, queerness, deafness, and the like do not sell. So, upon realizing that, where does one turn? Once again, as many of us in this room have realized at one time or another that this world is truly not built for us, that the American cinema industry is no different. Where does one go? Next slide. All right, break. Breaking the fourth wall, out of speech mode. So, I want to tell you where you go when you want to find things that make you think about you and look like you. All right, so a few things. I feel like one of the best things you can do is if you're ever interested in a certain national cinema or a director or just any topic whatsoever, type in, that thing, film syllabus. So many professors are incredible curators of work, stories, any indication. It will introduce you to a wide variety of things you've never seen before, all about things that are going to relate to you. Another thing I'll bring up is that unlike big box office films, most small and independent filmmakers place their media on Vimeo or Movie or YouTube or elsewhere, and so by virtue of that, it's easily accessible and you can go see it today. And then I want to point out these two things, which are both curatorial in nature. So on the left, we have this is the website, the Cinema Club. And every week they show a film. The film goes for a week. It's up there 24 hours a day, and it's usually something you and I have never seen before. I enjoy doing that. And also, if you want to learn more, you can go to this journal tab where they take the 5 best. They ask directors, so Claire Denis, Martin Scorsese, Agnes Varda, Pier Paolo Pasolini's of the world. What are your top 5 films? And what you probably know is that the filmmakers that we all love and enjoy are inspired by works that many of us have never seen. So I recommend that. Also, if you're like me and thinking of getting into Netflix pretty soon, I have a streaming option that I have really come to enjoy called the Criterion Channel, which just keeps up with most of the best films. The Criterion Collection is a collection of films that have been curated across the last 100 years, and I think if you want, it's $10 a month if you sign up. I think you over. Speech more read. And second to that, sometimes you must go within. Slide. I think at times when faced with such an influx of new content, you may feel compelled to take part in a film concert with the filmmakers who came before you. You also might be in film class. Film class has assignments. Regardless of the impetus, the results can surprise you. All right, this is something I made. This is an installation voyeur, and it was a culmination of my time at Duke and studying and being exposed to the work that I'm exposed to. And so I'll walk through it in the 4 TVs and what they all mean. Overall, voyeur for me was an exercise in seeing. I wanted people, non-black, black, to come in, see me for who I am, and also see themselves within the concept of those 2 videos. On the left here, these left 2 screens, I shot an experimental film where I sat in my professor's studio and drew on an easel for an hour and a half. But I never let the camera see the easel because it's not really about what I'm looking at. I just want people to see me. Whether they don't know me, whether they do know me, they don't know me. You see me, and what do they see about me is just my eye screen. So on the top is a wide angle shot, and on the bottom, you only ever see my arms or my face. Look at which one back. Up here on the right, I kept a laptop or a camera pointed at the viewer, so the viewer would always have to see themselves when they were looking at the entire installation, as a means so that they couldn't passively consume black images, they had to be engaged actively. And then on the bottom here, probably my favorite part, this TV actually functions as a television. So using the keyboard in front of you, viewers could change between channels of videos I found to be instrumental in my construction practice over the years, whether they were as recent as the classes I had taken the semester before, or things that I just love. I've been blessed, so that's every day. Yeah. But I'd like to return, and sorry, that's what I made. But I'd like to return to the question I asked. But once again, as many of us in this room have realized at one time or another that this world is truly not built for us, that the American cinema industry is no different. Where does it go? I'll tell you where. Those stories, experiences, identities, and livelihoods are where they always have. Remember this. The marginalized are in the margins. And we are the marginalized, but not forever, and not for long. Thank you.
I would like to thank everyone again for attending the inaugural IYFF Films for Social Justice Symposium event here at the National Center for Civil and Human Rights. I must recognize Cam, Timon, and Kate for your outstanding administration and flexibility in planning this event. Jill, I appreciate you allowing all of us to use this space to share active team voices in communities around the globe. All the speakers and contributors today, Francesca, Willow, Francesca Krikorian, Nigel, Jaden, Amina, Sid, Aria, and Shayla, spectacular job. Thank you guys very much. Have a great evening.